Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom.
The response to Simon's first Wisdom Moments compilation has been extraordinary. Leaders from around the world have shared how these insights resonated at the very deepest level, not just because they changed everything they thought they knew, but because they crystallized truths that needed to be heard and celebrated. I'm excited to share part 2 of Simon's Wisdom Moments series, featuring some of the most profound conversations from the Wisdom of Show. In this episode, you'll hear from an extraordinary range of minds that Simon has had the privilege to engage with. Shaolin Master Shi Heng Li on ancient wisdom for modern leadership. Pioneering neuroscientist Bredesen on the future of human potential. Visionary entrepreneurs Alice Barbery, Kristina Karlsson, and Purcell on building something lasting. Performance expert Ben Hammer on elite execution. And Boost Juice founder Janine Allis on sustainable growth. From timeless wisdom traditions to cutting-edge neuroscience, from entrepreneurial genius to transformational business building, these conversations reveal the patterns that separate truly consequential leaders from everyone else. As Simon continues traveling the world and having some of the most incredible experiences of his lifetime, he's struck by how these insights connect across cultures, industries, and circumstances. There's a depth of wisdom here that deserves to be preserved and shared. This is Wisdom Moments Part 2, the insights that refuse to leave your mind, from conversations that define our time. Enjoy.
In terms of lessons, number one is to do something you're really passionate about. Like, there's no way I would have survived the hard first 5 years, because they're the hardest, in my opinion, to kind of establish a brand and a business and know if your concept's going to working. So if I wasn't absolutely loving it, there's no way I would have got through that. Mm-hmm. Number two is to set a really clear vision, especially in today's world, because the shiny object syndrome is real, because there's so many opportunities now, and there always has been, but I think even more now, because you can basically do so many collabs in such a different way compared to 20 years ago. Yeah. So I think putting a really clear vision, we did that really early, and that helped us as founders and I guess the leadership team, but also our team to know where we're going, especially when it was tough. And the third one is to really dream big, because most of us are so restricted on budgets and how many employees we have, capabilities, all the things that a business have. But if you dream big and ask yourself, excuse me, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Because most of us are scared of failure. So if you put that away, what would you do with your business and your life if you couldn't fail? What would you do if you had all the resources, the money, and the skills to do whatever you want? What would that be? And then if you had the health and the energy, because a lot of us are tired when you start a business, it's hard work. So if you had all the energy, what would you do? Because then you create a business that is not restricted of your current abilities or current kind of restrictions. You create a business that is possible if you then implement that in a good way and in a measured way. So I think passion, setting a really clear vision, and dreaming really big. And the last one of the most important ones, don't say no, say how. Because the reason why I believe a lot of small businesses fail, I don't know what the rate is, but it was really high.
Yeah, it's very high.
I started. Yeah. Because you get so many no's. No one knows you. You get so many no's because you're trying to do something that hasn't been done before or hasn't been done that way before. You just get so many no's, and it's really hard to get no's. But if you don't take no for an answer and work around that, you always find a way. And I truly believe that's how small businesses or entrepreneurs that want to do incredible things really succeed. But don't say no, say how. Find a way. the one thing that really helped us doing that, which I think is worth talking about here, is that we systemized everything. So we started with, it was just me in the beginning, and then Paul, and then we had a team, and then we grew that team. And to be able to grow globally, we systemized every single thing. And when we made a mistake, we learned from it. So we didn't just be like, all right, well, that was a mistake, let's move on. It's like, how can we make sure that we never do that again? What kind of systems do we need to put into that? So there was a lot of work. It wasn't just let's just open a few fun places. It was a lot of work behind that to make sure. I would start with working out what you want to do in your life. And when you're young, you don't really know that. And what you know now and what you want now might change, but you would need to start somewhere. And this is for anyone listening. What do you want to do with your life? And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people live their dream life. And a dream life sounds a little bit maybe too good to be true or fluffy, but for me, it's about living a life that you choose to live. So I think the most important thing is to work out, what kind of life do you want to live? Like, I love working. I love business. I think it's easier to start a business than so many other things that people, find. People find that difficult to start a business, but there's a lot of simple things that I think is much easier to start a business than doing things like that. So we just learn, and I love it. And it's really important to me to do something that I love. And I think everyone should wake up in the morning and know why they're alive and know what they can offer to the world. And all of us can offer something. So even if you're young, you have some expertise, you have some passions, and you're willing to learn, and you have all the energy specifically. And most people, when they're young, don't have a family to feed, so they can work and really spend that time. But you can only do that if you love what you do. So I would say, start with dreaming. What would you do if you couldn't fail, if you had all the money and the resources and knowledge, and you actually didn't have to work for money, and you had to work every day? What would you choose to do? Because that gives a lot of indication, because we're also driven by paying for our rent and food, which is fair enough. But if you took that away for a little bit, what would you actually spend doing? So I think life as a whole is much more important than just focusing on your career or business. You want to combine it. So I would start dreaming. I would just start thinking if anything is possible, and then work towards it. It's not gonna, it's not sometimes. Working out what you want to do is part of the journey, living your dream life. It's actually the process. And sometimes when you take the wrong turn, it's the blessing, because then you might end up with something else. And that's just fun. And we can do all these mistakes, and we can take different turns and reinvent ourselves anytime. It's up to you. But when you love what you do, it's also infectious. So you inspire other people around you to do what they love. And if everyone do what we love, I think we create this ripple effect of inspiration, and most people want to do good in the world. And once we establish a business that support our lifestyle and all the things we want to do, most of us want to then help others to do the same, or help courses, or whatever our thing is. It could be the climate, but it could also be if we go through a challenge, sickness wise, then we often just feel like we want to then help people behind us. And I think that's the amazing thing that comes with wisdom, is when you learn so much and you feel like, I just want to share it.
I've always been a big fan of the philosophy of martial arts. It's this old principle that says you can only fight the way you train. You fight the way you train. So that's about preparation. And it's not actually the marathon that's the hardest part to do, or the game that's the hardest part of it. It's actually all the prep that goes before it that made that game even good or bad.
Yeah.
So I learned that from a young early age. If I'm in that moment, I'm in danger, my training comes out. There's a phrase that says, we don't default to our expectations and hopes. We default to the level of our training. I really do believe that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think there was a famous story about a guy who had a very high success rate for helping people get off alcohol addiction. And he was on Oprah. And she said, what's the secret to your high percentage rate? It's unheard of. And he said, one word, it's called selection. People have to want to change. Discomfort and dissatisfaction is the precursor to change. So you got to be sick and tired of what you're being dealt with. You got to be absolutely over where you're at in your life before you want to change. It's either you want to survive or thrive. They're the only two real, like, I think, spectrums in life. We're doing things to get by, or we have to change to be able to thrive. We can't, what got me here isn't going to get me there. So there has to be some type of dissatisfaction in your life, I reckon. And that's what happened to me. So I just wanted to learn. So Janine, who's my business partner and a good friend, the reason why she's so good at what she does, and she's actually wise in my view because she has results to show for it. She had to actually go through the levels from startup right through to regional, franchising, right through to global, made all the mistakes along the way. She can look at anyone's business, not through because she read a book on it, but because she had gone through the levels of the game and knows where the big boss is and how far to jump and how to reserve your resources. And she had sold her family home to start. She didn't pay herself a wage until she was, 4 years into a business. These are all things that you can't sometimes access certain things unless you're all in.
Yeah.
You don't deserve it. So like wisdom in a way is earned. It's not given in a way. Like in biblically, sometimes you can, like the biblical version is you can ask God for wisdom and he can give you wisdom about a situation. That's tapping into the divine.
Yeah.
But in the sense of work ethic and learning from, there's wisdom to be learned from other people's lessons that have gone through a journey. That's smart to learn from them or to learn from your own history.
Yeah.
So wise people are very good historians of other people and the most about themselves. They're very good historians.
Yeah.
And they know what to say, when to say it, and how hard or soft they need to say if they say something at all.
Yeah.
And so that if they seem a little bit removed from it. They don't want to. Wise people have to have that balancing out. Just because I could doesn't mean I should. There's a massive problem at the moment with businesses right now, with all our channels that we have,
Yeah.
is that so many great experts out there that are the world's best kept secret.
Yeah.
They're invisible.
Yeah.
And 84% of millennials don't trust ads that come from the company that made them. That's a true stat from HubSpot.
Wow.
It was N-Tribe that just came up with research that said 90% of people don't trust influencer marketing now. They like user-generated content, which is more authentic, driven from the actual user, not actually a paid actor.
Mm-hmm.
Our obsession with reality TV and vloggers now on YouTube and all these guys have completely paved the way to make me believe that we are exiting the institutional age where we blindly trust our institutions about the news, church, government. Don't just blindly trust them anymore. We've entered the age of authenticity. We care more about not just what's said, but who says it. Who's behind that company? What's their history? Now, what do they value? What do they believe in? We care more about those morals now, about the person. If you look at how many followers even Tim Cook has versus Apple, Tim Cook's not Steve Jobs, by the way, but he has more than double the amount of following than Apple does.
Yeah.
And so does Bill Gates and Microsoft, and so does Elon and then Tesla.
Yeah.
So what I think about branding is actually quite deep. Personal branding to me is your identity. It's your professional identity because people essentially don't buy from people who are invisible. You have to be seen, to be heard, to be chosen. It's as simple as that. So I think personal branding is the marketing strategy right now that is going to help your business cut through because it lends your company a personality and a story.
Yeah.
We know that facts tell, but stories sell. That's what I
Yeah.
believe it. And so often we might use the name of humility to say, I'm not going to be the face of my business because I'm too humble for that. If you don't have a personal brand, you're an expert or a founder today, it's not humility, you're invisible. Of course, people are going to judge you. You're an easy target. I'm an easy target. We got to know what we're signing up for here. There's going to be an opposition regardless of if you're on social media or if you're just going to be playing through local face-to-face going knocking on doors. If whatever level you want to play at, if you want to grow your business or make an impact from as as little as knocking on someone's physical door saying, hey, I want to offer you something like we used to do in sales. My goodness, you're
Yeah.
going to get judged and you're going to have a percentage of rejection. So it's actually bringing all that stuff to the forefront, say, actually, yes, you will be judged. Let's explore that. Let's finish that thought. By who? By people who don't know me. Okay, great. What's so bad about that? Well, they could say mean things about me. Okay, is it true? But oh, some of it might be. And we keep following it down the rabbit hole. So I don't let you get away with, and I don't let you get away without finishing and completing the thought. It's a very stoic idea.
Yeah, it's a
To the
great.
point where you realize these people who you're afraid of judging you, they have no name, they have no face, and they have no real, they have not earned their way into your life to actually consider their words to influence you in any way.
Yeah.
Because I say this quickly, Simon, if you're not defining yourself, you are allowing other people to define your brand for you. That's why we need to control our narrative and create and share our story honestly, so that when we're publishing content, publishing equals audience. If I publish something about particular topics and about a story and value, then I only want those types of people who resonate with that to follow me. Anyone who doesn't follow me, that's fantastic. Anyone who follows me who doesn't like my stuff, I tell them, unfollow me, go somewhere else, because this channel's not for you. That's cool, man. First of all, ask the fundamental questions. Who's your audience? Everyone. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. Yeah. What's your product? Who's your audience? And you got to do we go through sometimes of the Carl Jung characteristics. So what type of business are you? Personality are you?
Yeah.
So there's so many exercises you can get clear on your identity. Again, it boils back down to who are you? Who's your company? And that when you know who you are, then you know who you need to attract and where you need to go. Versus when you don't know who you are, what do we do as people? We imitate and we copycat until we can figure out something that works. Whatever gets us the result then. And yeah. And when you're in business, if you are blending in with everyone and not popping at all, that ain't serving you. And the whole point of branding is to actually be memorable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you copycat, you create a project home and no one knows why they should go to you or not. One of the things that young people need to know is you're an easy target. Don't wish that you weren't, just know that you are. As an adult, you're an easy target. If you're going to put yourself on social media, you are an easy target. So everything about you, from what you can see from your face to your weight to your height, can be labeled something negative. Right through to your interests, right through to your beliefs, right through to anything. Everything we see or hear of you is content for me to attack. So you're walking to the world where you can be absolutely attacked for those reasons. The question has to be not will I be judged or am I an easy target, but what criteria are you allowing people to judge you through? The second thing is I need to be able to say that to young people that you're valuable. You can't just say that you're an easy target without saying, hey, there is value to you. There's potential in you. And one of the things I say to people is this shirt is completely lifeless without me wearing it. So one of the things I say to my daughters a lot as they're getting older, my eldest is turning 8 soon. And she says, oh, how do I look in this dress, Dad? And I said, you make that dress look beautiful. See the subtlety? So the dress doesn't make her beautiful. It's actually her that makes it beautiful. Because I tell kids, you're creators. The one thing that separates us from the animals is that we can create a couple of things. One is fiction and non-fiction. We create clothing, not just for function, but for fashion. We give life, we give dead things life. This table's dead. Everything, this whole, like, it's just all bricks and mortar, this whole building. But what gives it value is actually you and our attendance, our attention. So you can't give what you don't have. So therefore you are valuable because you give value to things. That's what I teach kids around Australia. And I have 9 modules in my social kung fu. This is the first iteration of it that's being researched by the University of Sydney. It'll be evidence-based in a matter of weeks. So that's my mission with social kung fu, is to bully-proof Australia and to help make young people more confident through self-awareness and relationship with each other.
So look, I think it was, are we there yet? Far from it. I think if you think your business is there and you've made a success of it, then, quickly sell, because your business is a living organism. It forever continues. Other than that, it's really a matter of just having an open mind and a curious mind. So I will source it. If I find that I'm lacking in something, I will source out someone who's an expert in that area and take them for coffee. And I'll sit there with a pad and pen and I'll just write away, So I don't think there's been, moments where I've gone, right, oh, that has now been insightful. I'm now going into a different direction because of that. I just think it's a lot of a combination of little things that have contributed, and always having a curious mind and never thinking I've got the answer. I never think I have the answer. So I always think that there's, and particularly in this era where, there is people like your daughter who is more in connection with, who's a, obviously a digital native, who's more connected to that era than we are. So there's a lot to learn from everyone. So I think it's just having an open heart and an open mind to actually embrace what's out there and just be present for it. People hear good stuff all the time. They just don't do anything with it. I think at the end of the day, you have the end in mind, and whatever tools that you can pick up along the way to get you to that end is pretty much it, really. And that could be multiple things. It could be, end in mind would be, I want to be a really healthy older person, right? Okay, so if I hear something that is relevant to health or wellness, then I might prick my ears up and go, oh, let me understand that a little bit more. Or AI, right? Okay, there is a tool now available that it's been available for about 3 years that will speed up productivity. Okay, that sounds good. Let me look at that one. If you want to be an investor, it's a relationship. And so you need to make sure that that person knows who you are as a person. And that's really important. I'd also say I'm a firm believer that there's 2 types of people in the world. There are people who are verbs and people who choose to soar. The people who are verbs are the victims. They're entitled. They need to be rescued, and they blame the world for their woes. The people who soar are solution-based. They're accountable. They take ownership, and they're responsible for the outcome. So what I look for and what I would say to them is, if you make a mistake, that's okay. Come up with a solution. You should be pitching to them of all the things that have gone wrong and what you did about them, because no business owner will ever believe that everything has gone to plan and everything was smooth. So I think that honesty, and also that I'd be looking for, have they got grit? What sort of grit have they got? Have they been beaten down and then they've clawed their way back up to success through grit and determination and nous? So yeah, it's those sort of things that I would talk about. But people also need to understand that their own personal brand in their own world is also really important. The most valuable thing that you have in life is your reputation. Whether you're a small business, you're an executive, or whatever, if you don't protect your reputation or your personal brand, then you cannot complain about the consequences of that. It will always catch up. So if you want to cut corners and do business deals that aren't fair, or if you want to lie and cheat your way to get places, your personal brand will be damaged. So sometimes people, protecting your personal brand sometimes costs money, because you've got something wrong in business and you've got to stand by it and pay it back or do whatever. You're better off doing that and protecting your personal brand than having short-term gain. So I think that know that it is your greatest asset, and you need to protect it accordingly. Not everyone's made for business, right? And it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. Some people want to just do a job, work for someone else, and go home at the end of the day and switch off and just be with their family and not think about work, right? And even, look, that doesn't mean executives don't take their work home. Of course they do. But when you've got your house on the line, or you're looking to pay your payroll or whatever, you're on 24/7. And it's not for everybody. And it's okay that it's not for everyone, So I think that, some people even in this era where people are, getting onto TikTok and YouTube and making all this money in different industries, they feel that thing of, okay, well, I have to be like them because they're doing it. So I have, but I think the thing is that everyone has a path, and so I think it's okay for people not to feel like they have to follow the trend of a business if it's not for them. And sometimes people aren't built for it. If you want to be successful in anything, Olympian or a business person, It's what do you want to sacrifice for it? You know, so for me, you know, yeah, I had 3 kids, but was I present because I was, you know, madly trying to, you know, run this beast called Boost Juice Bars? Probably not. You know, did I really, was I prepared to give up my health because I was just so manic with regard to the business that I only just wanted to focus on that? And I think that nothing in life comes without a price. And, you know, right now, the price was worth it for me because I love what I do. I love the creation of business. And right now I've got older and wiser, and I certainly look after myself 10 times more than I have. In actual fact, I'm healthier now than I was when I was probably 23 years ago. So, so I think it's what you're prepared to give to actually then get it to do business. You've got to work out what you want in life before you start working out how to get there. Because if you just focus on the business, it might be not aligned with what you actually want in life. You might want to be an artist and you feel like you have to follow your father's footsteps to be in business because he's been in business for 20 years, but all you want to be is an artist. So I think always ask yourself, what do you want?
So there is a time when the sun is rising and there's a time when the sun is gone. So we have to exchange between day and night. Ever since we are born, it is like this. When we observe ourselves, since birth, there is 50% of inhalation and there's 50% of exhalation. The same goes for the way of how our heart is beating. It's always the exchange between, let's say, pumping the blood. So we have also this type of movement inside. In the way of how our body is behaving, sometimes we feel very well, sometimes we get sick. Yeah, there is a time when we are young, there will be a time when we get old. There is a left, there is a right, there is a up, there is a down, there is success, and there is failure existing. So that means the first observation is that in this world that we are living, we are automatically always and always confronted with the up and downs, the left and rights, with the duality or the polarity of what is existing in this world. So this is the number one observation. It's just happening. This world is consisting always of two.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a person who is always looking to have success, you're always looking for the upward move, getting higher, getting better, getting more beautiful. I think that along the way you will realize it's an illusion that you have put into your mind, because it is impossible in this world to stay on one line, because already the nature in which we are embedded in is always consisting of the ups and the downs. Now the question is, what is it actually that can perceive that it is an up and that it is a down? And this again is the consciousness. It's the awareness. We are aware right now something is moving upwards. We are aware right now something is declining. So the up and downs, this is something which will always and always start to move like a pendulum. You never know when you will be in an up or no. You cannot really decide if you are in an up or if you're in a down. But what is stable all the time is your ability to actually observe it. You can see the up and down. And what is very, very much determining if you are regarding something as up or down, this is your thinking. It's your thought. Because you have made your own thinking model about what does success mean to you. So it's a construct that you have put into your mind. And when something is in opposition to what you are thinking about your model and your concept of success, then it means you feel it differently. And this is where now in the Buddhist teachings comes the sentence, with our thoughts, we create the world. So success or failure is very, very much dependent on what is your personal definition of it. How have you defined success or failure for yourself? So the more you are staying in the thinking world, the more you think about it, the more complicated the world becomes. And this is the reason why we practice. Just return back. Return back to your baseline, the base awareness, which can simply observe the course of life. Understanding, as long as you have this body, you're going to be faced with the up and the downs of life. That's just how it is. And once this becomes something really feelable, so not just the words talking about it, so when the teachings really become your way of life, what it takes away from you is that burden and is that suffering that occurs. Always when you see there's the up, now comes the down. There's the up, now comes the down. Because you finally see how it is. There is no way for you to, like, let's say, influence when something's gonna occur in your lifetime. That is the ultimate core of the teaching for what it is and how it can help in our mental way of looking into the world. And now here you can see why the martial arts also fit so well into this whole idea. Because in the martial arts, which means it is a training for you to develop yourself with the abilities to gain skills in terms of martial art training. So you want to become, let's say, you want to be able to defend yourself. You want to become a good fighter. So this is, let's say, the martial art. And there's one thing when you practice martial arts, which is very important. And that one is you don't give up.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so that means, let's say, you start your training, you're feeling weak, and you're starting to do your first push-ups. First day, you can only do 5. But your teacher, he's pushing you to make 10. So the last 5, you're really fighting. And so embedded inside the martial art training, you always have that you are being confronted in a way with a difficulty, with a challenge, but there is no possibility for you, or there's no option given for you to give up. So what does it mean if you grow up as a martial artist? You know already that when you go into the training today, you're gonna face the next challenge. And now just imagine you grow up with this type of mindset. So that means you wake up and you already know, okay, maybe the day is not going to be exactly the way how I imagine. But for myself, I have decided already, no matter what comes, I just will not give up.
If you haven't got support from your leaders, it's like carrying water in a bucket full of holes, isn't it? And look, I think working with young people, there's in order to keep them employed, because people talk about how quickly they move, if they don't have a level of autonomy in their work, the sense that they've got some scope to make decisions and to run with things, if it's just lip service, tell me what to do and I'll execute. Yeah, sure, there was a time in the 70s, 80s, and 90s where you could get away with that, but in modern day, people want to have a say in how they execute their work. And so this was just a natural fit. It kind of just, I was like, why haven't we been doing this all along? But we certainly have been leaders, because we're a retailer that has a vertical product that we manufacture ourselves, design and make, but we also have a lot of third-party brands. So we had to go to some of our third-party brands and say, hey, we actually need this reporting. And they said, well, no one else is asking us for this. And we said, well, I don't care that they're not asking. We need to have it. We need to have it by this time. So they've recognized the need as well. And then the knock-on effect has been that their practices have improved. So it's got a ripple effect, which has been great. I think that the current young people that I work with now are the kindest, most embracing of diversity, the most generous, and some of the most decent generations that we've seen in a long time. They are more selfless, even though will always be selfish behaviors that happen, particularly before that frontal lobe closes at 25, right? So we're talking about people who are still operating in an completely formed, brain. We have social media, which is confused and conflicted every age group, but I am so pleased I didn't grow up with that distraction. And the entitlement aspect, if people feel that's the case, then look at the parents and look at the school set. I mean, when we started giving kids 12th place trophies and telling them that they didn't lose, there's no consequence to their life, then unfortunately some of these kids get jobs and they come to work late on a number of occasions and they get a written warning and they're devastated because no one in their 17 years has ever said to them, there's a consequence for behavior. And then we wonder why they're entitled. So they're leaving it up to business to almost teach the lesson of consequence, which, by the way, is also a pay rise and a promotion. That's consequence for behavior. The authenticity and alignment is something that I think young people have a clearer lens to see through than perhaps generations previous. If they'll sniff out inauthenticity in a heartbeat, and nothing is less satisfying than not trusting, who you're working with and who you're working for. So you have to show up. So I think, businesses really need to think about the symbolism within their organizations. So, for instance, I refuse to have any assigned car parks. That's just this hierarchical, ridiculous notion in my mind that I get remunerated differently, but why do I deserve a car park that's got, CEO, CFO, whatever? If I'm particularly late, maybe I've gotten off a plane, maybe I've come off the red eye from Perth and I get in and there isn't a car in the car park. That has happened and I have to go around up the street. I'm tired, but so be it, because on the rare occasion that happens is nothing compared to the casual in the distribution center today who gets the best car park in the place today. Like, good on him. He was here first. Why shouldn't you? I mean, those sorts of things, being seen, being visible. So no lunch at your desk. Everybody has to eat in the lunchroom. It makes people sit with people that they don't normally sit with and have interesting conversations. And I'm out there. So if you think, I'm too scared to make an appointment to talk to this person, but I can sit next to her at lunch and maybe ask a question. Just being visible and accessible, not having hierarchical symbolism in your organization that is pointless and is misaligned to the values that you have. It's because we're not ever striving for perfection, we're striving for continuous improvement. And so if everyone's aligned on continuous improvement, then it takes your ego out of the equation and it becomes a group desire to achieve better than we've done before. But you can't protect it if it's only in the leader's hands. It has to be in a lot of people's hands, and a lot of people have to align. And we talk about spreading the red and not spreading the red, spreading the green, kind of what you talk about with complaint free. And you're right, it doesn't mean that you don't confront the issue, you just don't confront the person. And that shift in thinking is we're confronting the issue, the problem, the disappointment, the miss. We're not confronting the individual. The individual's got to be part of the solution if we're going to solve this. And people have to be open and willing to hear feedback. And if you're not willing to hear feedback, then you don't actually care about your own growth. So how it's delivered, there's a process to how we want to deliver it. But it's about the problem, not the person. But it has to be in everyone's hands, and particularly in the leadership team. And then every manager has to buy into that. And so annual leadership training is really important so that we can make sure that the alignment that we have, that, you know, you run scripts in your head and the scripts drive your behaviors and your behaviors give you your results. So if you're getting bad results, what was you thinking in the first place? And when you start to train young store managers and thinking about, well, what, that's your model of the world, someone else has a different model of the world, how do you have that conversation to get curious about how do they see things before you push your agenda? But of course, there are agendas that we have to share, which are the values and the KPIs. They are shared. And the other thing is, you know, whilst we're doing all of this wonderful just behavior, the only way that, you know, I've made a promise to everyone who signed a contract, and that's that they have a job here. So look to the left and look to the right. That's whose jobs we're saving. So that one team culture, that people feel that they have an impact on the culture, and they know that they do. So choose your impact carefully, as we do have an impact on the planet, and as we have an impact on our customers and our suppliers. What has worried me for a very long time, and I've spoken about this numerous every opportunity, is there's a significant portion of the population that can only operate at what I would call a level 1 processing capability. So your really basic level, because of physical, emotional, intellectual challenges that they might have, new to a country, don't speak language, etc. And they are transactional jobs, really physical, transactional kinds of jobs. And technology has been removing those transactional kinds of jobs for a very long time. Someone used to pump my petrol, someone used to pack my groceries. You know, we keep getting rid of all of those sorts of, now you don't even have a checkout person. So as we've been continuing to get rid of that level 1 work, we've not created any opportunities for people with level 1 processing capability. And that is their limit. And that there are people who find themselves there. And if you don't have a purpose in life, a reason to get washed, get dressed, show up somewhere, contribute the best that you can, then that leads to addictions and depression and crime. So we're all going to live in gated communities, terrified of people that we created in the first place.
So when we say technology, it's also not just artificial intelligence, which is, I think, what we're all focusing on at the moment. We're seeing a massive rise in the metaverse as one example. So, you know, the metaverse today is valued at $180 billion. By 2030, that could be worth about $10 trillion, which is 7,000% growth and half the size of China's economy. So that is growing exponentially, and how people live, work, and play in the metaverse and what that means for leaders will be huge. So I think there's that, and there's virtual reality, there's 3D printing, I could go on, but technology is a really, really big bucket, and it is the biggest mega trend that we're looking at. In terms of the other ones, I mean, work, but that's more a byproduct of a lot of this stuff. And within work, though, you know, it's flexibility is a really, really big theme. So if I go back to sort of talking about signals of change, in Australia, we've had things like the right to disconnect come through, which is trying to protect outside of work hours. We've had secure jobs, better pay, which makes flexible working a right for some workers. The ACTU, the Australian Council of Trade Unions, has put forward positions for workers to be able to take double leave at half pay. So flexibility in how you take leave, and then the 4-day work week. So like there's a big trend around flexibility within the workspace. Otherwise, I would say sort of it really is climate change politics, or what I would say the geopolitics, which includes some of those conflicts like what's happening with the wars playing out. And then generations is a really, really big one. I mean, we have Gen Z who are becoming more and more prominent within Australia and the world actually over the next 2 years. Depending on where you live, Gen Z will occupy about 20 to 25% of the labour market. And so organizations, but communities really need to be paying attention to this cohort, but they're going to influence and shape a lot of what our organizations and communities look like. The sign of the most successful leader is that your team can operate smoothly without you. And that means that you have to be comfortable to be outshone by others. And so I've always said, if you feel like you can't leave your organization because for a week or two, if you went on leave, they wouldn't function, you haven't done your job as a leader. You've poorly trained up the people underneath you. You need to let yourself be outshone by others and check your ego at the door. And that's not a criticism necessarily of leaders, because that's just the system that, you know, we've grown up in, that we've reinforced, that, you know, about power and ego and everything and those sorts of dynamics. So I think that's another really interesting one. I've felt that in the environment that we're in, leaders are so reluctant to have a difficult conversation with people. And part of that, don't get me wrong, is that there's this level of concern or worry that in the regulatory environment, well, what if you take me to Fair Work, or what if I say the wrong thing and then I'm liable and I don't know sort of what I can and can't do. But you take, going back to that example of sort of working from home, a lot of the mandates, the rationale behind it is, well, you're not productive working at home. That's not a working from home issue. That's a performance management issue.
Yeah.
And so instead, you're avoiding having the conversation about performance and then forcing them and everyone else back into the office. So again, I think there's that. But then things that I'm already seeing that are happening and are just going to dial up, like collaboration is going to be so critical. Collaborating with your team and really asking them and talking to them about what they want, what their expectations are. It's not command and control, but we've been seeing a shift away from that for a while. And it's just that that's going to dial up, and also collaboration across your silos in the organization as well. It's really important to remember that as more and more goes online, the value of what makes us uniquely human gets amplified. And so any of the studies you see around what are the skills of the future and all of that stuff, it all comes back to our human skills. And so it's really thinking about how do you develop those, whether that's through formal or informal learning. A lot of the time that actually does come down to leaders, because you can't just necessarily send someone on a course and then, you know, after half a day, they're certified in emotional intelligence. Like that takes frequent point in time feedback from leaders and having those kinds of conversations, getting to know your team members as people, not in a transactional sense, but really in a deeper relational sense. That's the kind of stuff around how we retain humanity. And I think the other thing that I've seen really pleasingly with some leaders is, just because you can adopt technology, it doesn't mean that you should. And I think we'll see more gig workers, a lot more gig workers as well. So I think we could get to a point, say if you want to be provocative about it, in 10 years' time, where more workers will be gig workers than employed workers. And by that, I mean sole traders, contractors working, you know, doing a few days a week here, a few days a week there, or a contract there and then a contract there. I think we'll get to a point where we have more of those gig workers rather than people who are employed directly working for us. And as one example, this was pre-pandemic, so this would have probably changed, but Google had more sort of temporary workers than permanent workers. And so if you look at it there, it's, you know, a really interesting case study. Again, what happens if that plays out 10 years down the track? I think there's a high likelihood. For me personally, I'm very optimistic about what the future looks like. I think there's a lot of negativity out there, and the media that we consume is aptly amplifying that, because, you know, the news outlets need advertising dollars. We know that to get advertising dollars, you need our attention, and neurologically, our brains pay more attention to the bad stuff than the good stuff. We spend 2/3 of our neurons looking out for bad news and just 1/3 for good news. So we have this predisposition for it. So I get why people feel a little bit negative about the future. I personally believe that it's something to look forward to. I think another thing for me that's helped in terms of mindset is you should be using generative AI every single day in your job, particularly if you work behind a desk, even as sort of a leader who's predominantly in meetings and maybe not necessarily churning out the work as much. You should be using it every single day. And in fact, the loudest critics in organizations who are critical of AI are not the ones using it. And so that's where it's really important to use it. And what I do is I have like a to-do list, or I look at what I have to do first thing in the morning for the day, or on a Monday for the week ahead. And I essentially just go, if I had my own intern working for me, what work would I get my intern to do? And whatever work you would get your intern to do, 100% of that can be done by AI. And so that's how you kind of build that muscle of going, all right, it's more than just writing an email. It's more than just writing a report, whatever it might be, anything you would get your intern to do, get AI to do it for you. And it goes back to that sort of point as well. Would you get your intern to write a report and then without even looking at it, just copy and paste it and publish it online? No, they would kind of get it about 70% of the way. And then you would need to add, subtract, make sure it's in the right tone. That critical thinking you were talking about is going to lack that. And so you're going to want to overlay that yourself and overlay your wisdom and experience. And so that's kind of the mentality I get in when I'm thinking about how I can use it more and more. And it's such a game changer. And whether or not you want it to be a game changer, it will be. And so I really just encourage people to lean into it.
The big problem has been that if you don't understand it, you don't understand what to do about it. It's just like, fixing a country, fixing a company, whatever whatever you're trying to improve, you've got to get to the basics. You got to open the hood and look in there and see what's actually driving the process. And when you do that, what you see is that Alzheimer's and by extension, other neurodegenerative conditions are ultimately essentially network insufficiencies. It's a fascinating phenomenon. So what's happened is really goes back to our evolution, and the whole story is amazing. So as we evolved, what happens is repeatedly we select performance over durability. And of course, the organisms that selected durability are gone, killed by the ones that selected performance, right? So as we developed, we selected performance. And so you can see that in storage and neuroplasticity. You can store as much in your brain as over 2,000 home computers. And you can store as much as some of the largest supercomputers in the world in your 1,400 gram brain. It's amazing. Similarly, there is a subsystem that is for motor modulation, fine tuning. And in fact, if you don't believe in fine tuning that humans do, take a look at Simone Biles for 30 seconds, and you'll realize the amazing things that motor modulation can do. When that system goes awry, you get Parkinson's. When the neuroplasticity goes awry, you get Alzheimer's. And then the third one is, there is one which is there for amplification. So where you're going now from a thought to the maximum amount of strength you can have. Tremendous amplification. It's actually more than you get when you stomp on your accelerator in a car. Even though it doesn't take much to stomp on your accelerator, you get this tremendous amplification. You actually get more when you go from a thought to the maximum action. When that one goes awry, you get ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. So it's amazing how these evolve, but because they have evolved for performance over durability, they have Achilles heels. So you're there kind of working on the edge all the time. And as you get a little older, as you mentioned, you can now have these changes. But if you know what to measure and you know what to optimize, you can avoid the problem. We need to understand not just how these basic principles work, but also what goes awry. Why do we get Alzheimer's? Why do we get Parkinson's, Lewy body, frontotemporal dementia, ALS, macular degeneration? And in fact, if you look at these diseases, neurodegenerative diseases as a whole, this has been the area of greatest biomedical therapeutic failure. As they say, everyone knows a cancer survivor, no one knows an Alzheimer's survivor. Well, we've now seen many of them, and I've published papers on them and books on them. So we're seeing this. This is a real fundamental shift. This is a paradigm shift in the way we think about these illnesses. And so, again, if you look at the world problems, here in the US, for example, we've had over 1 million Americans who have died of COVID-19. But about 45 million of us will die of Alzheimer's, of the currently living Americans. So it dwarfs the pandemic, actually, in terms of numbers. And so the idea was, okay, why has this been such a problem? Why do we do better with cardiovascular disease, renal disease, various surgical conditions, than we do with neurodegenerative disease. Something is fundamentally wrong. So maybe we need to change the way we think about these. So there's so much that we have learned based on this one thing. How do neurodegenerative diseases occur? And one of the exciting things that we found is that your brain essentially, just like you have a sleep mode and an awake mode. So you go sleep, awake, and the way that you do this is, of course, very important for your health. Similarly, you have a connection mode and you have a protection mode. And in the connection mode, it has a whole bunch of things. You know, you keep your inflammation low, you keep your nutrients high, you're able to make and store new connections. I mean, everybody notices their good days, like, wow, I can remember things really, really well. I can do great on tests, all that sort of stuff. And it has a whole set of things. Your thrombosis in your arteries is lower. You've got more blood flow. You've got oxygenation. Your mitochondria are functioning. You are very good with oxidative phosphorylation, your metabolism. All these things are part of connection mode. And in protection mode, it changes a whole host of things and is now saying, we're going to use our resources instead of to make and store new memories and maintain them. We're now going to have to use our resources to fight these various microbes, toxins, and other insults. And you can literally measure this. And by the way, one of the things that is characteristic of switching over to this protective mode is the production of the amyloid that we vilify in Alzheimer's, when really it is there as part of this protection mode. So we've always been taught, we just have to give you an antibody and rip out that amyloid out of your blood vessels in your brain. That's really misunderstanding the problem. Your brain has literally responded trying to protect itself from these various insults. And this is why, by the way, there's so much talk now about infectious diseases and their roles in Alzheimer's disease. If you're in your 20s or your 90s or anywhere in between, your most important asset is your brain function. That's what you need. Look, you can have whatever you want. You can have great wealth and power and everything else. If you have no brain function, you're not in good shape. And so for many people, that is the concern. And certainly, people of my generation, the biggest concern was losing your cognitive abilities and developing dementia. As I've told our daughters, who are now in their 30s, you're the first generation that does not have to worry about this, because we now have tremendous sensitive tests. You can literally ask, do I have the beginning of pre-dementia, by getting things like p-tau 217. That will tell you if you're early on in the process. You can then ask, why am I in that process? What are my insults that are driving this? You can now address these things, and you can ensure that you will never go on to develop dementia. We've got many, many people on prevention. We haven't had a single one so far who has progressed all the way to dementia. So this is a fundamental change to recognize there's a tremendous amount that can be done. And the earlier you come in, whether it's for prevention or early treatment, the better off you are. So the reality is that people need to understand the paradigm shift is away from, I'm passive, there's nothing I can do about this, there's nobody out there helping, to no, I should never have this problem. So let's be proactive. Let's start getting evaluated. If you're 35 or over, and don't worry if you're 65 now, fine, get your evaluation. And you can see this coming. This is the one Achilles heel of the chronic illnesses that are killing all of us. That if we know what to look for, we can see them coming and do something about it.